thank you to this platform for bringing women together from different spheres of life. What I want to share with you in this talk is stuff that is not mentioned in the bio you just read for me, or anywhere else for that matter, but it being a forum where we really want to lead the change that we want to see in this world, it's only fair that we bring out our story with complete authenticity. So here is an authentic confession to the life that has been so far for me. I'm sure you've heard of this quote that says, "We can change the world and make it a better place. It is in your hands to make a difference." Nelson Mandela said this. And there's another quote that's very popular which says, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." This was said by Steve Jobs. But it being Gandhi Jayanti, I thought I should also bring out a quote very close to my heart that Gandhiji said, and he said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And if I were to subscribe to one of these quotes, because I believe they're quite different from each other, I would sincerely and gladly subscribe to the last one, with Gandhiji said, not because I'm an Indian, but because I do believe that when you have the intent to change the world, it starts with changing your own self. So let us not carry the burden of changing the world without knowing what we can change about our own selves and in our own life. My story has been a story of self-acceptance, but it started with a lot of self-denial. And that's where an honest confession is about to spill out. So I belong to a middle-class refugee family with very limited means, and my parents did all they could to ensure some comfort, though we weren't exposed to too much class or luxury. Right? My dad has served Standard Chartered Bank as a clerk for most of his life, and my mother was an officer with NCC. I am the eldest of the three daughters they're blessed with, but it wasn't much of a blessing that they counted. In a middle class family, when you have three daughters, you know what the parents were waiting for. Having said that, my parents have gone beyond their means to provide us with best of education. So a lot of my schooling days have been with the Army Public School in Delhi, which was one of the top schools then. But it had its own side effects. So even though there were certain, fee waivers which were granted because of financial position, and my dad humbly requested me to take that opportunity, I couldn't even accept that we would need such a waiver, leave alone reaching out to school authorities to ask for it. There wasn't much acceptance to the fact that my mother wasn't so elated about having three daughters because she had to face a lot of music from the close family members and extended family members for not having a son. So some part of her almost felt hollow in our childhood, not because of anything that she deprived us of, but because of how I saw that unfulfilled wish that was sown into her, through our extended family members. And there was an absolute denial that anything was missing in this complete equation. Well, there was a lot of self-denial, which then seeped into various other parts of life, starting with the color of my skin, to the fact that I had very little knowledge about all that my peers used to talk about, whether it was English music or traveling the world. I wasn't exposed to any of that, but I never stopped pretending that I knew some bit about it. And of course, falling straight on my face each time I was confronted with a little more detail that I didn't have to share. English language in itself was also a challenge that I can't call it as even our second language. It was probably the third language for me then, because we weren't, speaking in that language in the family. So I clearly remember when I moved from this neighborhood school to the army school in my 6th grade, my mother told me that if you don't speak in English in the school, you will be expelled. And the only thing that I had very consciously spent my time and effort was on maintaining some self-image, all this denial and the facade was to protect that self-image. So how can I allow people to know that I'm not comfortable with English? And with that desperation, I picked up the language almost overnight. And I think with that little success, this denial started breaking out slowly but surely. So from shaping myself into this seemingly introvert, underconfident, and barely even an ordinary girl, to getting transformed into comfortably extrovert, fairly confident, and having achieved a few extraordinary accomplishments already wasn't an easy ride at all, not for a girl from a middle class family in a country like India. But did that happen because of a godmother, a godfather? Did that happen because I took charge and I decided overnight to be this person I always wanted to be? It didn't. It did happen with self acceptance, but self acceptance in itself doesn't happen overnight. Self acceptance is about accepting yourself a little bit every single day and realizing the denials that surround you as well every single day. It doesn't happen when you want to break out of those denials because it is suffocating. It happens when you choose not to breathe that air of denial anymore. It doesn't happen when you're caught and you fall on your face. It happens when you don't want to fall for that reason. Let it be any other. So for me, that denial showed up for the first time when I didn't know enough about the music I was pretending to know about, when I couldn't frame sentences and I put my hand up to be a part of an English skit in school and was very rudely, blatantly rejected of it. Right? From there to being a keynote speaker today is an accomplishment that's enough for me to call this life a life lived well. But there is a story to share and something that I want women to know when they hear this story from me. And the story revolves and centers only and only around being able to accept where you come from, what you are, and what you're not. And in the same breath, accept all that you want to be because you can. And you can not because someone will help you through it. You can because you know that no matter where you want to go, it takes one tiny step at a time to get there. For me, it was about getting to a place where I could accept my skin color. I was the darkest in the family, and I might not look that dark to you, but my sisters are quite fair, and my mother related beauty to fairness. It was almost synonymous for her. And I remember spending a large part of my life putting Fair and Lovely to see if it can create some external transformation for me until I threw that tube in the dustbin and I said, this is me. And I'm so okay with that. And I didn't realize when my skin color changed on its own and when I got shades fairer, almost on its own with absolutely no effort or conscious means behind it. From someone who was camouflaging herself in the background, not showing up in family functions, to winning a pageant of Gladrax Mrs. India was not a ride that happened overnight. It wasn't a ride where my family always encouraged me for all that I had. It was with breaking those denials alone, slowly in my heart, in my mind, in my consciousness, and slowly accepting everything that I saw in the mirror and everything that I felt within me. So I want to encourage you to find that person that you are and see the beauty that you bring with all of that you already are. Because until you do that, it is impossible for us to see any magic externally. So entrepreneurship was another such plunge, another leap of faith that I took on myself. You know, being a banker means you have a secure job. It means you have a salary that makes you comfortable, in fact, sometimes a little too comfortable. It also means that in terms of status, you will always enjoy some respect, even if you don't enjoy your job. So letting that go didn't look like a wise thought at all. I mean, my parents weren't excited about it for one. I wasn't sure if this was the right thing for me to do as well, given that I always reached out for my, father's validation on my decisions more than anyone else's. And he wasn't quite with me for this one. But I took that leap of faith, realizing that I'm getting too confined in what the men around in the corporate world expect me to do or not do. I was feeling exhausted telling them that being a mother is a blessing and I totally want to enjoy that blessing and not justify myself to say that this is not an excuse for me to go back home at 6:30, which is an official time for us to wind up. I want to go back home at 6:30 after being clear in my conscience that I've delivered what I needed to today, and now I need to be a mother that I so love to be. And I don't want to be sorry about that. And I'm not guilty about that. And I'm not going to use that as an excuse to cut my work short. I do want you to see that had it not been a mother behind you who rushed back home to give you what you needed, you wouldn't have been here either. But it wasn't easy being the only woman in the team. So whether it's my fortune or bad luck, I was pretty much the only woman in any team that I was a part of in my corporate stint of over a decade. And I felt like you had to create a little space for yourself every single day. You had to sound apologetic about playing the role that you so love to play because the men around are not able to value it. You don't want to show up on a holiday, and that's not because the work demands, but because everyone else shows up. You want to spend that time with your little twins who were only a few months old when I was trying to get myself out of this guilt of not working enough or not living up to my boss's expectations. I remember putting my twins who were 4 months old then into a daycare because I had no better arrangement to take care of them and I needed to go back to the job. I remember rushing from there to daycare in my chappals because I couldn't have been able to run the speed at which I had to run on my heels. And I would put my heels back in the bag and wear chappals so I could run and catch the train to reach the daycare so I'm able to pick my twins before they shut it down. And that was a struggle that only a mother can appreciate. And I want us as mothers to realize that if we have the power to do that, then we don't need a validation from anyone to tell us what all we can do. It is the passion with which we use ourselves, our breath, our emotions into every relationship, which is needed for us to achieve anything else in the so-called corporate or business world. So being an entrepreneur had thrown its own challenges at me. Women entrepreneurs aren't too many, especially in spaces related to leadership, which is so closely linked with the corporate world again. But I chose to be in this space because I connect with this space. I connect with this space because I know there is so much to be done here. I know that this is one space where there is no sense about worrying, about competition, because this is the space where I want to encourage more and more people to come and contribute. I want more coaches standing next to me because there are so many people who need to be coached. And I alone cannot do all of that. I need to have more people, more coaches next to me. I need to have more people who understand leadership and can translate what leadership truly means to people who are leaders or trying to be one in their leadership roles. Because until that changes, nothing in the office environment, the corporate environment will change. And if that doesn't, then us as women will always have to choose between being a mother and being a professional. And I think being asked to choose between the two is not a fair ask at all. We have enough of capabilities to perform well as a mother and as a professional, and there is no need for us to choose one over the other. When I'm asked in different forums about what it takes to be a woman entrepreneur, my knee-jerk reaction to that question is there is only entrepreneurship that I want to talk about. Because there's nothing different about it when it comes to women entrepreneurs. So why should I create a separate speech on what women entrepreneurs should do? And why should that be any different from what entrepreneurs should learn and realize? Because entrepreneurship is all about having that level of self-motivation which drives you even when you have nothing supporting you, even when you have absolutely no one validating or confirming your beliefs and your fears. You stand tall to say, you know what, I'm feeling low today, but I know tomorrow I'll be on a high and I'm going to wake up to that tomorrow. And you will see that happen. And I'm not waiting for you to make that happen for me. If that is a trait required for an entrepreneur, then how is it not needed for men to be successful as entrepreneurs? It is just as much as it's needed for women. So here is a message that I want to leave you with when you're trying to lead with change. If I have been able to lead my life with this change that I have been able to bring about in the same lifetime, I strongly believe anyone else can. What it takes is for you to accept yourself. And when you accept yourself, you know that you need to drop the burden of guilt that you carry. The guilt that I felt when I used to sit outside that daycare and cry my heart out feeling like I'm a terrible mother. The guilt that I felt when I picked my bag to rush back home, and the guilt was to be a less of a professional and less productive than the men around who were contributing to business. The guilt that I felt of becoming a woman entrepreneur and choosing to be an entrepreneur when my own father was not in agreement to that decision. Someone who's, the most important person for me in my life was not with me when I made that decision, and hence there was such a feeling of guilt. And it is only when you drop all this guilt and when you accept everything that you choose to do with a leap of faith that comes from within you is when you bring in the ability to lead with change. So I want to encourage each and every one of you, every woman out there, to just put your one step forward from wherever you are. And the moment you do that, please know that when you look back, you would have already created that difference through your leadership. Because of that one step you took forward, there are many others who are now ready to do so. So thank you so much for your patient listening. And I do hope that with this small speech and a little life story here, I'm able to impact a few other lives on the other side of this camera and see that ripple effect in the environment we live in. Thank you.